I'm excited to dive in with y'all today on this topic. I feel like this is, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's almost like an interestingly controversial topic. I feel like, because I feel like there's like one school of thought that says, like, take one funnel to seven figures. That's the way you have to grow and scale. And there's another that would say, like, definitely don't do that, diversify, blah, 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 blah. And so I say all that to say, this is not like me giving the recommendation that like the only way you scale your business is take one funnel to seven figures. Like that's not the only way. It's never the only way. However, this is technically what I have done in my business. And I've definitely had clients do this and I've had clients not do this. And so I wanted to share a little bit about that from both kind of like a trade-offs perspective, a practical perspective, some advice on like things I've learned along the way. And so again, just wanting to kind of like level set that like this could be the way you scale, but this does not have to be the way you scale, right? Hey, Claire. Hey, Rebecca. So happy to have you. I forget what our giveaway today was. Let me look. Let me look. It is $100 gift card. So if any comment today is just like a thank you for being here, engaging with us, supporting, listening to me drone on for however long, any comment all, even if it's just a hi, you're entered to win a $100 gift card. So as always, thank you for being here. All right. Also, if you have questions on this, I mean, I feel like there's like a million kind of directions that this kind of conversation can go. Hey, Alyssa, thank you. That this conversation can go. So if you have specific questions on this, or you're like, ooh, when I saw the topic, I wanted to ask this, or I wanted to dive into this, let me know because I will be happy to kind of like take it in whatever direction suits you. Um, but I really want this to be like actionable advice, some behind the scenes, that kind of stuff. But there's specifics that you are after. Let me know. Hi, Al. Good to see you. Kate says, I'm grateful for these lives. Always so many juicy takeaways. Thank you, Kate. That means so much to me. Um, okay, so let's talk about what we even mean by one funnel to seven figures. So to me, that means like one offer, basically, to seven figures. So um, if you look at a lit up life, I basically took one-on-one coaching and was like, that's the, my like 6 month one-on-one coaching, that's the one offer I'm going to use to take us to seven figures. Do I have other things? Sure. I have like very small products. I sell intensives occasionally, but like ultimately, like my entire business is comprised of one offer of 6 month one-on-one coaching. And that is what took us to, um, the seven figure mark. Hi, Amelia. Good morning. Just finished your mini course for Amazing Results in 101. Love it. Yay. I'm so happy to hear that. Oh, that makes me so happy. I feel like that's kind of like my new baby out in the world. So I'm so, so glad to hear that. That means so much to me. So yeah, we took 6 month one-on-one coaching, took that to seven figures. A lot of times this might involve like taking one course to seven figures or one group program or one mastermind or whatever, but it's sort of this idea of like focus in on one thing, become known for that thing, scale that thing and take it as far as you can go before adding other things, right? Again, I'm not saying this is always the path, but that would be like the thought process behind this of like rigorous focus on one thing instead of split focus on lots of things. And I think it's like a bit of a personality type thing too. Like whenever I hear people giving out this advice, I always find it very interesting because, excuse me, I know some clients that I have the personality where like that like single track focus is really helpful for them. And I know some clients who just would like never do that. Like who just couldn't, they just don't operate like that. Like it's not how they function. They could just never be like one thing. So again, all is to say, like, yes, there's like business strategy, but there's also like what fits for you, what works for you, what makes sense in terms of how you operate and what you want, all of those things. So take that with you into this conversation. Hi, loving your reels. Oh, Netta, thank you. That also means so much to me. I feel like I've been putting a lot of energy in that direction lately. So I really appreciate that acknowledgement. Thank you. Um, okay, so I think one of the most useful things I could do is kind of like, we'll start by like case studying it a bit. So I can think of um, myself. I'll use, and then let me talk about like maybe one or two other clients who have done kind of the like one funnel to seven. Um, so for me, what that looks like at a lit up life, I love one-on-one. I doubled down on that. I added a revenue share model, and all I've ever done is that, right? In terms of taking it to seven figures. I think a lot of people find that interesting in terms of a lit up life. I was actually just talking about this. I'm in a mastermind called CEO Mama, and someone was talking about leaving money on the table. And so I was kind of sharing about how I've done that in my business. And I actually think it's like what's given me so much success. And so what I was saying is like, I think people look at my business and they think, that doesn't make sense. You have 600 people on a wait list, right? Probably more than that at this point. I haven't looked in a while. You have like over 600 people on a wait list. Why would you not give them something else? Like you're leaving so much money on the table, it makes no sense. And in theory, that is true. I am very much leaving money on the table. Like if 600 people have raised their hand and said, I would like to, or I'd be interested in paying you in some way, and I'm not letting them pay me, then obviously I am leaving money on the table. However, to me, it's like quick win money versus like long-term sustainable growth money. So could I go sell something else to those people on the wait list? Yes. However, a few things would happen there. One is it would be less than the offer they want. So like if they're on the wait list for a one-on-one because they desire one-on-one, and then I'm like, well, instead I'm going to give you this other group program or something like that, right? And if they don't have a stellar fucking experience in that, then actually, like, I just lost money in some ways because a bunch of people paid me less and now don't want to pay me again. Right. And I mean, yes, obviously the theory there would be like, give them a stellar experience. But which takes me to the way I scale my one-on-one and make money is when my clients do well and when my clients make money. Right. And so if I take my eye off that prize and I'm like, well, I'm focused on my clients last because I'm trying to deliver a stellar group program experience to 250 people over here or something, right? Depends on the conversion rate. Then I'm taking my eye off the prize that is what's growing and scaling our business. So then I have less happy clients potentially over here, or at the very least, maybe they're still happy, but I have less income there, right? And yes, I just made 250 sales on this group program or whatever. But now, like my job, so to speak, would be to like keep them happy enough so they want to buy something, right? So point being of all that, it's not impossible. Like obviously that's possible. But for me, it feels like such a like risk I don't want to take, number one, but also like a quick money grab. Like it's more about like, okay, how do I make money off these 600 people instead of like, how do I make money in my business for, years and years and years to come? And so sometimes like, yes, it can feel like, why would I ever just take one offer and scale it to seven figures? If I'm like making that much money off something, of course, there are going to be other people in my audience who want more, who want to learn more, right? And that's true. And that's where people get screwed sometimes, is because they're so like easily kind of swayed by like, oh, there's money to be made here, or someone's asking for this or whatever. And it takes their eye off the prize. And so what was once maybe like a train barreling towards seven figures is now like derailing in all these ways, right? Hey Sabda, I hope I said that right. Kate said yes, so logical, totally. Hi Alessia, hey Brittany, you guys for being here. But right, so that's like how we derail the train sometimes is it was on his way, but because we were like, someone will buy this, or I have this idea, or this seems like a good offer, people are asking for this. We get so out of focus. And I've seen this happen with so many businesses that I've watched in the online space over time is like they had an incredible offer that people were really, really happy with. And then they just started kind of grabbing at other things. And then they lose out on the reputation of that really incredible offer because all these other things are like subpar and like we're done really quickly and kind of messy. And I'm all about messy action and things like that. But messy service, messy delivery, that's a different thing. Um, and so that is the case for one funnel to seven figures is like do something so fucking well, get so focused on that that you know you can sustain that for years to come, as opposed to grow something to the point where people want other things and then kind of almost start running your business based on what you're hearing other people want and get, yeah, kind of derailed, right? So for me, it's been a pretty obvious answer always to be like, yeah, I'm okay with leaving the money on the table for that, because I see what it gets me long term. One of my, like on the strength finders test, one of my top strengths is futuristic. I think it's like my second like strength. And so all that to say, like, I think that comes to me kind of naturally. I'm quite naturally like a pretty futuristic thinker. So I'm able to kind of be like, yeah, I could do this now, but I see how that might not help me then. And so that just like is what keeps me focused on the one thing, you know? And I think it's really helped my business a ton. Kate said that's what I struggle with, sticking with it for the long term with the program and not bailing on it because people are telling me they want this other program. Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like it's so hard sometimes to be in that when you feel like, oh, they're saying they want this. Like I would have 100 people buy this tomorrow or whatever. It's like sometimes it would feel crazy not to do that. But in my opinion, in my experience, like that is when we get derailed the fastest. So I'll use a different client example of that actually kind of happening. So this client came to me, and we kind of did like an initial build of her business that got her to multiple six figures. And then we really decided like, okay, at this point, take this one thing, scale the shit out of it because it was working really well. Um, and it's funny because she was messaging me about this other day and she was like, you were always reminding me this. I wish I would have listened closer. But basically she did start on that path of like one thing to take this one thing really to seven figures. She was at like low multiple six and was like, okay, we're going to do that. And we really started to, and it really started working. And it was going so well. But at that point, everyone was asking for everything from her, right? Um, she really was like gaining so much traction. There was so much like buzz, and she was buzzing, right? Like it's so exciting when your business is growing like that. It's so fucking exciting. And so she really ended up kind of getting off track and she did hit 1 million that year. So it was pretty cool, right? Like we went from like low multiple six to 1 million in a year. However, she added in a bunch of stuff toward the end of that year, as we do sometimes, because we're like so excited and like, your coach can tell you, stay focused. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But she really got burnt out from that at the end of the year and then really ended up pulling back and and kind of had to restart that one funnel to seven figures kind of thing because her attention had gone so many other places and that had been such a quick path to burnout, um, versus just staying locked in on the one. And so this is what I think can happen with people sometimes is they initially start with that intent. They're like, this thing's popping, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to focus on it, I'm going to take it to this place. And then once you're doing that and you see all this interest and engagement and people are asking you for things and you're buzzing, your business is buzzing, it's so easy to sidetrack. So I use one of those as an example because I think it really is harder than it seems to stick to the thing, like Kate was saying. Like in theory, it's so logical. In practice, it really can be hard. And so I wanted to give one of those examples because I want to say, like, I know it can be hard. I've been there behind the scenes with people where it's like just so tempting not to, but it's not just about the money aspect of it. It's about the intensity and burnout aspect of it too. And I think that's really something for all of us to acknowledge. Like people always ask me, like, how do you do one-on-one so much? And I'm like, because I don't do anything else, Like if I was like recording a bunch of course modules and all this other stuff too, I mean, that would be incredibly hard for me. Even the mini course, like that was such an undertaking. last year, and it was like a little mini course of 7 modules. And I was like, holy shit, I like that took a lot from me. Um, so proud of that thing and so excited for it. But if I was also like running a group program, teaching a course, building out tons of content, I could never do one-on-one in the way I do. Like the reason it works is because of the focus. The reason it works is because it's the main thing, you know? Um, and I think that's worth saying. It's not like because I'm superwoman or something like that. It's because I'm not doing 90% of the other shit a lot of people are doing, you know? Um, okay, so another example that I want to give then, because I think it's good to hear both. And I also want to talk timeline because I think that's something that's really relevant here too. So I have another client who came to me. She was probably making, I'm gonna like say between 5 and 8K a month from this one thing. Um, and oh, you guys are saying things I want to see. Let's see. Shantae says that makes so much sense. I think my question is, how do you lean on belief? So mindset when you're waiting for the pop to happen with your one funnel. Perfect question. I'm going to actually dive into that with this example because I think you're so right. That's the hard part, right? Amelia said such a basic but not so basic reminder. Yes. Thank you for normalizing how much energy it can take outside of ongoing one-on-one client work to build a course. Oh yeah. Listen, we're all made for different things. What I can tell you for sure is I'm not made to build a course, and I like give all the respect to people that are. Maybe I will be in another season. It is not it for me right now. But yeah, like I just think we all have different strengths, different weaknesses. Like I see myself more as coach than teacher. Someone else might see more teacher than coach, and they might think it's much easier to build a course than be on one-on-one call, right? Like, but it all takes energy, and we have to acknowledge that, I think, you know? I think I'm something in my tooth. If I keep doing that, licking my thing, it's because I think I have something in my tooth that's driving me crazy. Okay, so to answer the mindset piece and to give you this example, so this client came to me, she was probably making like 5 to 8K a month from this one kind of offer. So we really built out the funnel for that, doubled down on that, went all in on that. And in the course of about a year, I would say we took that from 5 to 8K to she's probably at like 45K plus a month. So like really significant growth, right? To be like, I have a funnel bringing me in 5 to 8K. I have a funnel bringing me in like over 45K a month. But it took a year and it was already something that was working decently well. Right. And so when we talk about all of this funnel stuff too, I think one of the hardest parts is that it takes a fucking while, which kind of leads to Shantae's question of like, how do you stay in it when it's taking a while? And I think we have to like level set on that. The other client that I was talking about that we went from like low multiple 6 to 1 million in a year, I remember telling her it will take about a year. And she still references that now. Like she's like, Lacey told me it would take about a year. Um, and like, that's not even to say you can hit $1 million in a year. I mean, like a year to get it functioning really well, where it kind of just is like the funnel's doing really well. Like it just matters what we feed it, you know? Um, and so I say that to say, like, this is why I think it's hard for most people to take one thing to that place. If you look at my business, right? From when I like really doubled down on one-on-one and did the partnership model, I mean, I think it took me 5 years to hit a million in a year, you know, like even from when I set the goal of 1 million, probably 2.5 to 3 years to do it. Um, and so I think that so few people have I don't even want to say patience because I'm actually not someone that has a ton of patience, but I think have the ability to like see the future win in that enough to stay in it. Because it really will take time. Like I think that that's like one of the most unspoken things in our space that really harms most people and has them jumping offers is they think if it was the right thing and the right offer it would like happen, you know, like if that was really the right funnel I would have already blank. If that was really the right offer my people would have already blank. And that's so not it most of the time. Shantae said, I'd say persistence to play the long game. Yeah, perfectly said, which is so frustrating sometimes, but I also get it. Yeah, it's like seeing that future view and being like willing to work toward it for a year, multiple years kind of thing because you want it so much. Um, versus being like, I'm sort of like, willing to change as much as it takes to have that fast pop. And I think like that's the difference. It's like, are you willing to like hang out for 2 to 3 years doing the same thing to get it to like one funnel to seven figures? Or are you going to change so many things in those 3 years, right? That 3 years later, you're still making about the same because it's all changed a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like I see that with people all the time. It's like they're making the same thing they were making 3 years ago because they've changed their offer every year. Kate said, yes, a lot of lottery mentality, thinking it's the right offer, so it's going to blow up instead of staying in it and refining it. I love that you said lottery mentality. That's perfectly described. It's so true. We do that. Hi, Deidre. She said, one of the things I do for clients is paid ads. And the hardest part is getting business beginners to understand that it's going to take experimentation and time to get amazing wins. Oh my God, exactly that, right? Like it just takes time. I really needed that lag today. I have my master plan and it works and grows and it takes time. Exactly. Like you can see the progress along the way. It's not that you can't see any progress, but it is. It's like growing, right? And it takes time. I remember my very first coach ever used this metaphor with me, and I've always used it again and again since then because it was so helpful. And she basically said, a lot of times it's like a pot boiling on the stove. Like the temperature is heating up the whole time and you don't see it until it starts to boil, right? But if you put a thermometer in there, you could see that marker along the way. That's why I'm such a crazed person about data, because it's like, wait, like you could know instead of waiting. Like you could see along the way that it was working if you were actually tracking the data, which is like part of what makes it easier to stay in. Like that one client I mentioned where she got up to like the 45K mark. She's been really, really big on data this whole time. And I think that was such a huge part of having the mindset to stay in it because she could see it working. Now, she had some setbacks along the way too. Like, do not get me wrong, there were some pieces that were like huge setbacks in her process, but ultimately, like, she could see the value of working towards that. And I really think that that's so important. Um, yeah, which answers my question. It's a really long game. It is, right? And that also stops the momentum by continually changing. Right. I think like, if you're someone who's like, oh, I'm making about the same I was 3 years ago, but I've changed my offer 3 times, like in some ways, congratulations, because that's an incredible feat in and of itself, to be honest, to be able to change that many times and still get amazing results is like pretty incredible. But you're also making it harder for yourself, in my opinion, right? Like you're having to do so much of that heavy lifting again and again and again. Where like the reason a lit up life is easy for me now is because I don't have to do most of that heavy lifting now. And there's like a real value to that. It's also a real time saver that I get to focus on my clients and on making more money. Deidre said I'm on this live for 5 minutes and I'm already so motivated to change some things in my business. Thank you, Lacey. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so happy to hear that. But yeah, I think to your point of ads, it's the same thing, right? Like I think everyone thinks ads are like quick win lottery or something like that. And it's like they're the same as everything. Like they have to get tested. You have to look at the data. It takes time. You have to perfect it. And I just think so many people in our space are just like really not educated on that. And I don't mean that in like it's their fault way. I mean like the space just doesn't talk about it. So like it never even like occurs to some people like, oh, I could just like work this until it works, or I could just stay in this until I got what I wanted. Because that's not what we hear predominantly. We hear how fast it can be or how you have to have that pop moment or whatever. And like usually there is a pop, but like one of my clients is definitely in a pop right now. I'm thinking about. She is like so fully in her pop moment. Like it's incredible. I just was messaging with her before this live stream and I'm like, girl is in her moment. And there's been a huge build to that moment. So yes, it seems like it's popping now. And also there's like a year of work behind this that we've like diligently put in that led to this point. But like that often gets left out. Um, Shantae said which also speaks to why coaching is so beneficial because it seems easier to jump ship than wait it out. Totally. And like that other example I gave is even when you have coaching, sometimes you're still going to do some crazy shit because it's so hard to stay grounded in that and to not go for the other opportunities and stuff. Like it really, really is, you know? Deidre said the lottery mentality is people DIYing ads 2 days before the end of their launch and wondering why they didn't get sales. Exactly. Right. Or like changing their offer, like, you know, overnight and thinking that that will generate more sales or whatever. Like it really does take more time and energy than most people are willing to say. I'm in, like I was saying earlier, I'm in a mastermind called CEO Mama, and a lot of the women in there have like, are there, it's like very funnel focused, I would say, in some ways, in terms of like types of businesses. And like the amount of work and energy and thought most people are putting into theirs would absolutely blow most people's minds. Right. Like I think people so significantly underestimate like how much the effort and energy and thought and care and attention the business owners that they look up to are putting in. And I don't mean that means they're hustling their face off or killing themselves, but I do mean like they're not like throwing a masterclass together in 5 minutes and like wondering why it didn't convert. They're not writing an email sequence in 20 minutes that's messy and calling it good, you know, like just stuff like that, where it's like, we don't want it to be that much work sometimes. But for most people that are like scaling to 7 figures and then sustaining that for a long time, it's because they're bringing a lot of diligence and care and attention to what they're doing. They're not changing offers every other week or whatever, you know? And so I think it's just important to say that. I feel like I have a really unique view and like the caliber of clients I work with and the kind of like friends and spaces I'm in. And I just like always want to be so open and transparent about that. And same with me, right? Like I put a considerable amount of effort into my one-on-one clients because that's where we grow and scale, right? Um, am I hustling my face off? No, but like I know where to put my energy and time, and I really, really show up where it is, not haphazard in any way. And I think that, you know, that message in our space that, like, yes, it can feel easeful, right? Like now at this point in my business, almost everything about it feels really easeful. I love how I show up for my clients, but it is by no means easy. It is by no means like this kind of like flippant thing, you know, like it's not like, oh, I did it super fucking messy, who cares? It's not that. And I think it's just worth saying that because when we hear that message over and over again and then it's not happening like that for us, we're like, what, I'm doing the thing, I threw it out there, I like showed up, da, 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 and it's not popping, then we make ourselves wrong. And that's, I think, when we find ourselves in the lottery mentality or switching offers around a lot. Shantae said it's such a mind game. Like mindset is everything, or at least 95% of what you're speaking to. Totally. And honestly, Shantae, I appreciate you saying that too, because, excuse me, to me, this is why I love data so much, because I'm like, if you have the right data, the strategy is mind-blowingly easy and simple. And it's easier to stay in it because you can see the progress. And so it chills your mindset out a little bit more. But at the end of the day, like it's all about what do you have to do to let yourself stay in it? What do you have to do to be committed to this thing, even when it's been 9 months and it's not yet hit the goal you wanted to hit or whatever? You know what I mean? Like for me, it was like, what did it take to stay in one-on-one as I was building this big wait list of people that I could sell to and knowing that I had $1 million goal and not just taking the quick win? Like that's like, right. It took a lot. Asha said they're meticulous and intentional. Perfectly said. I love the word meticulous. So good. 100%. You're not making yourself personally wrong. So true. You're able to see things way more objectively. Yeah, exactly. Like I think having that view of like, okay, can I just objectively see that this is working? Maybe it's not working in every way that I want it to, but it is, right? And can I not take it so personally? Can I see like, oh, I just need to pivot in this way, or I just need to change this thing? And that's part of what helps you stay in it. I think where so many people dip out is it feels so incredibly personal, or it feels like they owe their audience something. That's something I see a lot too, where it's almost like, they feel like people are asking for this, so I have to give it to them or something like that. And, I think that can be so harmful too, where it feels like just because someone is asking for something, I'm supposed to create it for them or I'm supposed to give it to them. And I think I did this live stream that I'm sure you guys remember, but or I'm sure some of you guys remember is what I meant to say, where I went into like the surprising things around scaling, and some of it was like leaving money on the table, being willing to disappoint people, and I feel like that's totally what we're talking about here, right? At A Lot of Life, I had to be willing to leave a bunch of money on the table and disappoint people when they asked me for something I couldn't give them, like, but that's what takes the funnel to 7 figures. It's kind of as simple as that, right? Like, say no to the other things, be willing to disappoint people if you're not giving it them. That's it. Like this client that I mentioned earlier that went from the 5 to 8K mark to the 45K, like she gets asked all the time for different things all the time, like of course. And she does have other things in her business, but her focus and intention has for sure been in this one area. And so um, she has to be okay with saying no to those other things because she knows that this is the thing she wants to sell. But like people are always asking for more of her time and energy and all of that stuff. And like you just can't give it sometimes, which, depending on your personality type and what your own trauma and triggers are, that can feel really, really, really hard to do. Yeah, so this is also interesting. Thank you. I'm so glad. I'm trying to think of what else I want to say around this. I think like let's talk some like actionable stuff here. So I of an exercise I love to have my clients do if we're talking about this is build out 3 to 5 scenarios on what it would look like to take an offer in your business to 7 figures. So for me, like I would be like, okay, it looks like each client makes about X and gives me X% in revenue, or, maybe 3 clients make this and the rest of my clients just have to make this. Like, draw out potentials and possibilities. Like, how much of a course would you have to sell? How many people would you have to have in your audience? Like, get clear on some of this stuff, not in a way to be like, oh my God, that's so not going to happen, right? Because sometimes it can feel like that when we start to draw it out, but in a way to be like, oh, okay, there are lots of ways this one funnel could get me there. Like, I could grow my audience significantly, or I could raise the price a little bit, or, I could have X amount of people sign up for this and then sign for the continuation support after, or whatever. But like, you kind of have to see it to believe it sometimes. And I don't mean that in like you have to see the number, but I mean, see that it's actually possible in your business, because sometimes it's also not. So let's say that too. I feel like some of this, like, oh, I'm going to take a $37 product to $1 million is also kind of tough because, like, I mean, if you really math that out, it is absolute insanity how many people would have to see that product for you to take it to 1 million. It's like over 1 million, like, so if you're incredibly great at creating viral content, or you're willing to put, an absolute metric shit ton of money into ads, fine, but like you're not profiting 1 million off that, that's for sure. And so like you want to pick something that's actually feasible to do this with. It doesn't mean that you have to be able to see 100% that you're positive that could happen no matter what, but I think you also have to have like some measure of being able to be like this client that I was saying, that means she's making like her offers about $1,000, right? So that means she's making about 45 sales a month. Like, okay, we can see that as doable, right? We can back the numbers up on that and see like, okay, if she has this many in her audience, reaches this many people, like there's some like reasonable nature to being able to do that. Or if there's not yet, we're like, okay, but we can see if we grow your audience by X year over year, you could get there in 2 years or something like that, right? But always try to play with the numbers a little bit and really see what's possible, because I think that that can help so much when you're like, oh, I can actually see how this could get there, instead of it feeling so vague and like a guess. Would you recommend choosing a service like strategy sessions or done for you ads, or a self-study online course? I mean, I would think about like number one, what do you like the most? Because that's really big. And number two, like, because those are really different things, right? Like, you spending your time doing strategy sessions or running ads for someone versus you spending your time kind of like as the marketer of a course are like really different paths. And so I would think very much about like, what's a path you want to be on? Like, that's what I always think about when I think about a lot of life is like, I picked something that I liked enough to stick with it for 5 years, you know? That is huge. To me, like that's the only reason I got there is because I picked something I liked enough to do it for that long. And so I know that sounds like cheesy advice, but it's really true when you're thinking about stuff like this. Like the thing that you have to like the thing that you're scaling to 7 figures enough that you would be like so happy to do it and do it anyway and all of that because if not, it's just going to be too easy to jump ship. Hey Samantha, great resource for learning about and reading about data. Yeah, thank you, teacher. Dateable. I'm obviously incredibly biased because my second business is all about data, but our website is Get Dateable. I can send it to you, and we have like great resources in terms of like free opt-ins. Our webinar is incredible in terms of like the amount of data it provides. Let me see if I can give you this link really quick. I'll just drop it here. Let me see if I can get you the webinar link. And it will give you like a pretty a pretty good view on like things about data. Like the webinar is probably like the best place to start. Let me just grab you the link. Um, there we go, workshop. I was like, what would we have made this? Okay, there you go. Highly, highly recommend the webinar. It will just give you like an overview of like how to think about data in your business, resources, all that kind of stuff. But what was I saying? Hmm. Oh, yes, we were talking about Jeter and like which offer to go with. So anyway, I would think about that. So first actionable thing, like draw it out, see it in action. Look at your current offers and how they're performing is another thing I would say too. Like, what's bringing you the most money in your business? What's actually working? What is the thing that you're most easily getting clients in? What does it look like to double down on that? That's something Jen and I talk about with data all the time is like, it's easier to double down on what's working than like massively fix what's not working. So that's always something to think about as well. Excuse me. And then the other thing I would think about too is like, it's kind of a mindset thing, kind of a practical thing, but we'll take it, is to be able to do this, you kind of almost have to get into that mentality of like, I'm treating my business like a business. And I know that sounds kind of obvious and silly, but where I feel like a lot of people like really struggle with like seeing something through to 7 figures like this is they're really treating their business like an outlet for things they're personally interested in versus like their business. And so what I mean by that is they're like, yeah, I'm kind of over talking about like insert XYZ thing, right? Like say your offer is about reels or whatever. Like I'm over talking about reels. Um, it's so easy for me now. I like barely think about it. I'm like so over talking about that. I'm like really excited about this other thing. And I think that can really screw us because it's like where it feels like such like a personal endeavor versus like what I'm selling is a training on reels. And so I am of course going to talk about reels. And it doesn't mean you can't like bring other things you're excited about into your business, but it really is getting that focused effort in versus sort of that like shiny object syndrome of like my business has to be whatever I'm most interested in or excited about at that moment because a lot of times it won't be. And that's not a bad thing. Um, you know, so the thing is, this is so common for entrepreneurs, especially if they have ADHD. Totally. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think that it just is something that we can all like be aware of like, yes, I want to do that. And I can find ways to do that without having to make my whole business that. Like, I definitely have clients that have ADHD. And like, we just have to find like helpful channels for them to do that within without their whole business becoming or their whole marketing becoming around that. Um, So I think that's really important too, because that focus is obviously what's going to take it. And obviously, if focus is challenging, of course, there's going to be other things we have to work on there. But I definitely think there are plenty of avenues to give you like helpful ways to put that into things instead of it feeling like it has to be the whole thing. My way of solving it was creating different front end ways topics to get people into my main offer. Yeah, totally. Right. So I could be creative with the front end stuff, but I was still selling the same thing back end. Yeah, totally. I think that's a great one. Another one I've had clients do is like, it's like their main thing is a membership. So they can put all their like stuff, their new ideas into the membership, but they still have one strong sales funnel and one focus to it. So I think there are lots of ways to do that, like on the front end, on the back end, right? But not changing up your whole business every time, I think means so much in terms of being able to really take that further. Kate said, all my clients are neurodivergent and finding ways to keep them stimulated in healthy ways and honoring their timing is huge. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's also important to say, like, everyone's path's going to look different. Like, it's not like everyone has to be so rigorously focused that they never, ever, ever divert or pivot or any of those things, like by any means. But I do think like ultimately, if we look at a lot of the businesses that have been able to like take the one thing and run with it, they focused enough. And that's all it takes, right? It's like they were consistent enough, they were focused enough, right? And I think that's always really helpful to like sometimes we can get too rigid about it, where it's like, the entirety of my focus has to be here. I have to be consistent enough by showing up every single day, blah, blah, blah. And it's like not that. It's like you have to be more consistent than not or more focused than not. It's like such a gray area. And so I think that's important too. Like, this isn't like if you're someone who struggles with focus, like you could never do this because it's like all or nothing. I don't think it's that. It's just like, are you more focused than not? Are you mostly locked in on this one thing? So funny, I have a podcast going about this tomorrow. Exactly. That's awesome. Yeah. Maybe it's just like this combo and message is alive in the universe. Okay. What else to say about this? Okay. So the practical, right? Like treating your business like a business, getting really like even just intentional and diligent about wanting to be focused. Like, I think even that shifts it for a lot of people is when they're like, oh, I just do want to focus on this thing and I'm not going to focus on these other things. Like sometimes it's just that much of a decision. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, did you say it as like, that is it, I'm doing that? Or are you like, well, I'm still kind of like weird about committing to that. Or I don't really want to fully say that. Or I haven't quite locked into that. That's a thing. And then, from a practical standpoint is know what progress would look like for you because you're going to have to see progress along the way. Like, does it look like your conversion rate getting better? Does it look like, like your ads are performing better? Does it look like your open rates are going up? Does it look like you're making X% of growth in sales? Like, whatever that is for you, know what those are because you're going to have to see those wins along the way before you ever hit 1 million. So for me, it was like, do I see revenue share payments from my clients increasing? Like, by and large, is our revenue share on an upward trajectory? Can I track that? Can I see that? Can I see how we're moving to our goal? Amazing. That's good. That's what I want to see. And if I'm not seeing that, why not? And what do I need to do to fix that? And so there's so many markers showing us we're on the right path or when we need to deviate. And I feel like sometimes when people set a big goal, it's like the goal or nothing. And that's usually really detrimental. And so finding the ways that you'll know if it's working, that will keep you engaged, that will keep you excited is everything. Sean has said, oh, I agree. As someone diagnosed with ADHD, I'm for sure locked in on bringing one-on-one coaching to 1 million. Love that. Yeah. Like, I think that, totally one fit one out. It's me. Yeah. I think like that commitment is everything. Like you're saying, right? Like that one foot in, 1 foot out thing can really like mess with our brains. And then especially if you're like already having trouble kind of like staying with that focus, like it can really mess with you. And so just that decision is so powerful. What else there? I think that's really it. Like what I would always remember is it's so much simpler than it seems. Like if you take one thing, you study it, you look at what's working, you solve the right problem, like the simplicity and strategy behind scaling it is actually so easy. What's hard is all the other stuff we talked about, treating it like a business, staying in it, staying locked in, not making yourself wrong, not second guessing it, not changing your offers, not changing your mind, like on and on and on. But like, really, rest assured, like the strategy is simple. And if the strategy is not feeling relatively clear and simple, you're either not looking at the data or you have a mindset thing going on for the most part. Um, 9 times out of 10, it's like, okay, well, it makes sense to make this pivot. Now, sometimes it's a guess and sometimes you're testing it to see what happens. And if it works, it's not like you always know for sure no matter what, but you're relatively certain that this is the one thing that needs changing, and then it's easy to change. And so that is just like a good reminder or barometer to use too. Like if this is feeling very complicated, or if you're feeling like you need to dive so far into the deep end of strategy or whatever, like it's probably a mindset thing more than anything. If you're jumping around between offers a lot, it's probably not an offer problem. It's probably a mindset thing. So a lot of the scaling to 7 figures is what's happening. Or I mean, taking one offer to 7 figures is what's happening up here. And again, for some people, this is right, and some people it isn't. But like that's the game you're really playing, is how do I stay in it for a year, 2 years, 3 years? Like that's it. So I hope that helps. I hope that provides some like realistic perspective on that. I think that um, in some ways it's like that's why the dream gets sold as a dream, because even being able to scale to 1 million in a few years is fucking incredible, right? Like the dream is a dream. But like that interim time just crushes people. And I think the marketing does too. So it's like really this like interesting dichotomy of like, it is the dream and it is so magic. The idea that you could like take an online course that you built and make over $1 million from it in like 3 years time is like mind-blowingly incredible. But again, like that window of the 3 years just like kicks your ass so hard if you're not in the right place, that most people don't get there. So that is my spiel. I hope it helps. Shantae says, oh, Sam says this is so helpful. Thank you, Samantha. Shantae says, I mean, if it takes me 5 years, for example, I'm okay with that trade-off. Amen. That was an awesome topic and reminder. Thank you, Alessia. I appreciate you guys so much. Hope that you have a beautiful Monday. If y'all have questions for me on this, obviously let me know. And I'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.